Today we will see a demonstration from my side wherein I will just show you that how to create your first mapping. Before that, so if I talk about here briefly about the architecture, server-side components would basically include, you have the domain, we have the node, we have services, now services, integration service and repository service, right? So we have license. Now services can be of two types, I'll tell you. It's not only the application services. So we can have core services and we can have application services. So this is what makes up your domain. This is what is inside your domain. These are the major objects which are present inside your domain, right? And we have the service manager. And there will be many smaller processes. Now each of these service manager will be working. Service manager is nothing but a set of process, right? So there will be many smaller processes which will be doing their own tasks. But these are the objects which we have in the architecture of Informatica. And we talk about the client side architecture, the client side component. We have repository manager, we have designer, we have workflow manager, and we have workflow monitor. Okay, server side components, client side components. Here these four client tools will be used, and we will be seeing the first how to do the load, first load. How will you do it? So how will you be using the client tools to do your load? So I open any one client tool. So if you go into your installation, you'll see the four tools there in the client folder. Power Center client, okay. D, R, W and M. These are the four. Using it, pin it and open it. Open any one. First of all, we need to open the repository manager first to start with. Using it for the first time, we have to do some configurations in the repository manager. So I open R, click on R, the repository manager opens. Here in the repository manager, first step, you'll not see these folders, this repository configured there. When you log in for the first time, this will not be configured. So first thing you have to do is go into the repository menu, configure domains. Okay, you have to configure your domain. And while configuring the domain, these things will be blank. Everything will be blank here. You have to configure it. So you will click. This domain will not be present here. You will have to add it manually. So add a new domain. You'll have to click on that. Now you'll have to give the domain name, host name, and port number. So these things you'll get from the admin console. Domain name is, you'll get here in the domain properties. If you go to the domain properties, you'll get the domain name. Give that. And gateway host. Gateway host means the gateway node. What's the host name and what's the port number you have to give for the gateway. So gateway node, the host name is this one and the port number is 6005, which is default. So you have to give this and click on OK. So this domain will come here. And then for that domain, on the right hand side, what all repositories are inside that domain, it will list it there. Here we have one repository configured. Select your repository and click on OK. So your domain is configured. Okay. If you do these steps, your domain gets configured and here you will see your repository. Now, next you have to connect to it. Connect using, you can connect using, you do not means no specific users have been created now. So you can connect using the administrator, the super user. Administrator. So when you connect to the repository for the first time, again, there would be no folders. There's so many folders you see here. You have to first create a folder, then only you'll be able to work with the objects. There will be no folders for you when you work for the first time. You have to create a folder create, where you'll be segregating your objects within the repository. You have to segregate your objects within the folders and then work there. Without a folder, you cannot start your objects will not get created and you will not be able to work with any kind of objects here in Informatica. So folder is the first thing we need to create. Give a name to the folder. Now here we will be using the folder for the demonstration purpose and other lab activities. So I am creating a folder here. Just see, this is the same thing you'll be doing. You can name it anything logical. I'll name it with the batch. Okay, now permissions. Just give the administrator permissions for now. Read, write, execute, all permissions. Okay. And then we have an allow shortcut button. So this is only for the shared folders. If from that folder you want to create some shortcuts in some other folder, then you have to make this folder as a shared folder. For that you have to select allow shortcut. For now this is a general folder which I am creating. I'm not making it shared. Click on OK. The folder has been successfully created, right? So here you get this one. We will be working on this folder. When you click on this folder, inside this folder currently we do not have any object. It's blank. Configuration is default. So inside this we do not have any objects. If I open any other folder, you would see there are many objects inside it. Target, source, transformation, mappings, and all different kind of objects which we use in Informatica. All of them are there. But in our folder, we do not have anything. So when we start working with this different objects, we start creating, these things will be visible to you one by one here. Now, this is what we do in the repository manager for the first time. And when it's done, you can close it. Now we have to work with the designer. You can click on D and go to the designer and you can close this repository manager. The job is done for the repository manager. We needed to do the configuration, the domain configuration in the client. So that has been configured. Now start using it. Now start D, open the D, that is the designer. Again, you have to connect here. See, in the designer, if you are not seeing this domain configuration, if it is not visible to you, then try disconnecting and again reconnecting to the repository. Might be you'll be able to view it. Even if you're not able to view it, then again you can configure the domain here also. We went into the repository basically to create the folders. Okay, first you configure the domain and then create the folder and then come to the designer and we'll work here. So this repository will be visible to you. Connect to it, and this is connected. Now we have to open our folder. Inside that we'll be working. Intellipaat 11th June. Right click, open. Or here also we have the open button. We can directly click on it. The folder which is opened will be shown in bold. Okay, bold letters. So here you're seeing it in bold font. So these are the objects within this folder. We can create source, target. Forget about these cubes and dimensions currently. It's here in the scope of ETL. Source, target, transformation, maplets, mapping, user-defined functions. These all things can be created. We can deal with all these things in the designer. So we'll be working on them one by one. First of all, we start with how to work with the separate objects and different objects and how to create a design. So coming back, for your first load, what all things you need to take care of? Okay, open the repository manager, then configure the domain, then you'll have to create folder and assign permission, correct permissions to that folder, like we have given the administrator permissions. Okay, then open designer and start working. Then you can work with any client tool. First of all, you have to work with the designer because you have to design your objects. Okay, and then you can start working on that. Okay, so now we see what all things we have in the designer. So when we talk about designer, what are objects we deal with in the designers? I'm coming to that now. So when we are in the designer, we basically talk about sources, targets, transformations, and mapping. These are the four kind of objects, four basic objects which you create in a designer. Now, other reusable objects are also there which we can create that I'll talk about later. So we have sources, targets, transformations, and mapping which we can create. Okay, sources are the source definitions of your source. You need to define the structure here in Power Center. That's your source. Target is the definition of your target, whether it's a file or an XML or a table or some external application or some other kind of application, any kind of system, that will be your target definition. That's your target. Transformations are the objects wherein you actually give your business logic. What kind of logic you're going to implement to transform your data. What kind of data transformation you're going to do. Whether you're going to filter out something, whether you're going to aggregate something, whether you're going to sort your data, or you're going to rank your data, or you're going to route it into multiple flows. So all those things are decided within the transformations. There are various types of transformations which we will discuss, and these are the objects wherein you give your business logic according to the requirement, okay, during designing your job. Now, Mapping is actually a combination of this source, target, and transformation. Okay, so this mapping consists of source, target, and transformation. So for a valid mapping, you need to have at least one source, at least one target, and at least one transformation. Then a mapping is said to be valid. So these objects we will talk about here in the designer. So coming to the workflow manager. In the workflow manager, we talk about task and workflows. And if we say tasks, then there are many tasks, but we will first of all basically talk about session task. And there are many other tasks also that as we go into the workflow manager module, there we'll talk about that. So for now, you just know that in workflow manager, we will create tasks and workflows. Now what's a task and what's a workflow? In the designer, we saw we can create sources, target, transformation, and we create a mapping and save it. Now that mapping means my overall load. How I'm going to extract from the source and how I'm going to load it, that design is there in the mapping. But to run it, I'll have to create a task, session task, and I'll have to link it to this mapping. If I created a mapping with the name mapping 1, then while creating the task, session task, it will ask me which mapping you want to associate it with. You have to give mapping 1. So that task will contain all the properties of the mapping. And that task will be created inside a workflow. Workflow is the parent object. Workflow is the high level object. Okay. Within the workflow, we will have the session task. And when we run the workflow, this task starts running. That means whatever load you have created, that will start running. Inside the workflow, also we can have more than one tasks. Okay. Workflow is a ordered setup. We can have a number of tasks ordered in a certain sequence, or you can have it in a sequential format or in a parallel format. However you want to run the jobs. Let us say you created 2 mappings, mapping 1, mapping 2. You want both of them to run parallelly. So in the workflow, you'll create a workflow 1. Inside that, you'll create 2 tasks, session 1, session 2. Session 1 you will associate to mapping 1, session 2 you will associate to mapping 2, and you will configure them parallelly for parallel load. So one workflow can contain multiple tasks. It is a set of ordered tasks. Now how you are ordering your tasks, that you need to decide according to the requirement, how you are going to run the jobs. Okay, so these basic objects we will talk about. Come to the designer. Okay, so first of all, we'll see how to run your first mapping. For this, the demonstration would be here. I will be talking about an employees table. We have an employees table in the database which has certain amounts, 100 odd rows. So that employees table will be the source. I'll be picking the data from the employees table, and just I'll be creating a pass-through mapping. That is, pass-through mapping means no changes, no transformation of any data. All the 100 rows or whatever rows I'm getting from the source, I'll simply dump it into a flat file. So my source will be Oracle employees table, target will be a file of the same structure. So file will contain just all the data of the table. So this is what I'm going to demonstrate here, and this will be the first mapping which you'll be creating to see how to create a mapping. As I said, here in the mapping designer, we are going to deal with source, target, and transformations. You can see source, target, and transformations, and all these 3 will be inside a mapping. So basically, first we have to create a mapping. Inside that, I'll have to keep these 3 and I'll have to connect them when my mapping is ready. So you can have more than one source also, you can have more than one target also, you can have more than one transformations also. But for this demonstration, we will need one source, that is employees. We will need one target, that is the flat file of the same structure, and we will be having one transformation which will be just passing through your data. It will not do any changes to your data. Right? Let us start. So when we come into this designer window, you can see on the left hand side the panels, sources, targets, all these nodes you can see. Now when we create the source, then it will be visible to you inside this sources node. When I create the target, it will be visible to you inside this target. Right now nothing is there. I'll start with the source. Now in the designer, you find 5 different windows here to work with. Source analyzer, this window is for just working with your source structures, source definition. Second one is the target designer. Here we work with only the target designs, target structure. This third is the transformation developer. Here, this is only for the reusable transformation. So currently I'm not touching this. This is for the reusability concept. Maplet, again, reusability one. The last one is the mapping designer. This is for our use now. Here we can create a mapping. Here I will drag my sources, targets and transformation, everything, and collect them, arrange them, link them, and then prepare a mapping. So we will use the source designer, target designer, and the mapping designer. First, coming to the source analyzer. Our source is Oracle employees table. So I have to connect to the database now, and I'll have to extract the structure of the employees table. So how to do that? Go to source. I do not have that structure here in Informatica. I have to connect to the database and bring it. So import from database. So when you do import from database, it needs a DSN, a data source name, because it'll ask you for the driver information, what drivers you're going to use to connect to the database. It's internal communication. So basically not internal communication. Informatica is going to communicate with the database, connect to the database and bring in the information. So it needs the connection information and all other stuffs, the driver which is going to be used to connect and all those information. So I have to create one here. One DSN needs to be created. If you do not have, in the projects, you will not have to do this stuff. Already existing project will already have a DSN, but here let us see how to create a DSN. Use a DSN you can create. Okay, so I will create a DSN. Go to the create, add, select your database driver. So Informatica is providing you with the data direct drivers. This is the third party data direct, which is providing the drivers for all the databases which are supported here. So it gives us the Oracle one also, 7.1 Oracle wire protocol. Select your database, this driver, click on finish. Here it asks you for the connection information. Data source name, you can name it anything. I am naming it host for the database, your host name, or you can use localhost as it is configured. Port number for Express Edition for Oracle. Service name for Express Edition is XC. If you're using Enterprise Edition, it will be ORCL. Now test connect. Give your username and password. So I have created a separate user here in the database for where the tables are there, right? So when you install this Oracle Express Edition, you find that HR schema. The HR schema is there where we have some of the sample tables to work with. If you see inside that, there's a HR schema. You have set of 7-8 tables, sample tables, which has enough data to work with to start working. Right? So you have the sample tables there. There we have an employees table also. So I'll be using that user, that particular employees table that is under the HR schema. So I have created a user called HR where I have kept that table. That is already there. HR user is already there. It's by default present in the installation. Connection established. Apply. Okay. Okay. So my DSN is created. Now from the drop down, just select your DSN. DSN Intellipaat. Username and owner name is the schema name. That would be same here for this case. Give the password. Connect. It will give you the list of all the tables which is present under that user. Tables, employees. Okay. Select your table, click on OK. The structure will be imported. See, the structure comes here. This is the structure of the employees table. So I pull the structure of this employees table. Now I can do here one thing. There is a self-join, there is a PKFK relationship between manager ID and employee ID. I do not need this. I can remove it just to avoid any confusion. I just remove that foreign key from manager ID. This is for Informatica structure, for Informatica metadata. Doesn't have to do anything with the actual table structure. So Now I have this structure ready, just had to import it. I imported it. You can save it. Control S. So if you press Control S, it gets saved in the repository and it will show you this message, saving in the repository infra repo. Here it connects to the to your repository database and saves it there. So I have the source structure. Next thing is target. So what will be my target? Target will be a flat file, and I'm just doing a pass-through load, so the structure should be same as that of employees. So for the target, since I'm taking it as a flat file and I do not have any such file or any such structure from where I can import. If I have any such structure, I can directly import from file. So from that file, it will take the structure. But here, I do not have any such structure of employees where it can pull from. So what I can do, I already created the source. So the same source structure, I can copy it here. You open from the left hand side panel, you just open your sources, see this employees source, and just drag it into your target designer. It will become a target. Same source got copied as a target. Okay, but you can see the type is Oracle since our source was a database. So this employees which we copied the structure from the source, since the source was a database structure, it was a database definition. So this target also became a database definition. So I can change it, double click on this. Here the database type you can change to flat file. Just select from the drop down flat file. That's it. Now flat file is of two types, delimited or fixed length. So I'm keeping it delimited for better understandability because we'll separate it with a delimiter. Fixed length will be separated by the column lengths. So I'm not using it now. We'll see it later. Apply. Okay. So I have the employees file structure now. Same structure as a file. Control S. You save your target into the repository. Now come to the mapping designer. You create your mapping. Mapping, create. Give a name. The standard should be M underscore and then your mapping name. So I can give it something here. My first mapping. Okay. Now inside this mapping, we should have the source, the target, and a transformation. So first I'll drag my source and bring it into the mapping. Select your source, just drag it and leave it here in the mapping. Okay. So you see when you drag your source, something else comes in along with it. That is the source qualifier. So this source qualifier is the default transformation. This comes with all of your sources. Whenever you bring any source into the Informatica mapping, then the source qualifier also comes along with the source. That is a default transformation. Now, why is the source qualifier used? Just to explain to you a bit more, we will be talking about the source qualifier as a separate transformation list. In the transformation list when we'll be covering, we'll cover the source qualifier. It does a lot of things, but basically the source qualifier it works as the qualification of your source inside the Informatica environment. Now this Informatica and Power Center environment is different from the external environments. Here the source is Oracle. In Oracle, we have the data types. The data types are represented as number or varchar like this. But in Informatica, we do not have a number data type or a varchar data type. In Informatica, it's decimal or string. We do not have char, varchar, these things. Informatica understands number data type, decimal data type and string data type. So this source qualifier takes care of this thing. The compatibility of your source inside the Power Center environment is taken care by the source qualifier. You do not have to do any data type conversions from your source. When you bring it into your Informatica environment, it automatically converts the data types to the compatible ones. So you can see here, source it shows as number. Here in source qualifier is belongs to the Power Center environment. That source is native to the database. Here, so you can see here, employee ID. This is number here. It has been converted to decimal. Varchar converted to string. It identifies the compatible data types and converts it automatically. So you're not doing here anything. So that's why we have a source qualifier in all your mappings because it comes along with the source. When you bring your source, this will come. So we have the source qualifier here. Now it does a lot more things. We can do a lot more things in the source qualifier. We can actually control what we are going to extract from the source. That thing we can control here in the source qualifier, but now I'm not taking it as a discussion. I'll discuss it later when I talk about the source qualifier transformation. For now, we have one source, one transformation. Now talking about targets, you have the target structure also. Drag it into your mapping. So as I said, a valid mapping needs one source, one target, at least one source, one target, and one transformation. So we have them. That means my mapping is valid, but I have to connect these fields to the target. Once I connect it, my mapping will be valid. Just connect it here, save it, and you see the information here in the output window. Mapping is valid. When it says mapping is valid, then only you can continue. If the mapping is invalid, you cannot create a workflow and continue running it. It's not executable. Your mapping should be valid. Okay, you can also validate your mapping from here. Inside the mapping menu, you have the validate button. If you want to explicitly validate it, you can click on validate. So my mapping is complete now. Thank you.